Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody again. Just a reminder, my name is Sandy Fazeli. I'm with the National Association of State Energy Officials. Just a quick few notes on meeting logistics. We are encouraging discussion as much as you'd like. Please use the chat to ask questions. You're also welcome to raise your hand on Zoom to ask questions and contribute to the conversation. And please also note your name and organization when you speak so that we understand where you're coming from. In the interim, though, if you're not speaking, please keep your microphone muted to minimize disruptions. We'll plan to pause for questions and comments throughout the meeting, but please also, again, feel free to use the chat. As I noted, our meeting will be recorded and posted on NASEO's Infrastructure Hub for NASEO members who aren't able to make it live today. We have a really great lineup to explore these questions around supply chain and workforce opportunities and challenges and gaps in terms of implementation of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We'll hear opening remarks from John Williams, Vice President of Policy and Regulatory Affairs with NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Next, we'll hear from Leah Rubin-Shen, Director of Advanced Energy Economy, and Lisa Jacobson, President of the Business Council for Sustainable Energy. So thank you so much to all of our experts for being here. I did want to make a quick plug for NASEO's Infrastructure Act Resource Hub. This includes matrices and resources and analyses from NASEO and some of our partners that tackle different provisions of interest to state energy offices. A couple of past meetings that I will highlight for you include our March 9th meeting that did a review of energy efficiency and conservation block grant program, which will be receiving $550 million through IIJA, as well as our April 20th meeting, which provided a review of domestic preference provisions and how the Infrastructure Act affected provisions like Buy America and Buy American and all of the domestic content rules at the federal level. And of course, we're interested in any resources that we should add to the site, so feel free to let us know. With that, I will turn it over to NASEO's partner in crime, E for the Future, Karina Wallach. Feel free to share a few opening words, and then we'll turn it over to John to get us started.
Great, thank you, Sandy. I'm Karina Wallach with E for the Future, and we are partnering with NASEO on this webinar series and also partnering with NASEO on creating some model programs or programs in a box, as we're calling them, to serve as guidance for state energy offices in how to best utilize new federal funding. Really thankful to NASEO for putting on this webinar series and partnering with us on this initiative. And feel free to reach out if you'd like to hear more information or look at the sort of soft launch of the site that's available now. So I'll turn it back over to you, Sandy.
Great, thank you so much, Karina, for the partnership and for the great work that E4 is doing on IIJA. With that, I'll turn it over to John Williams from NYSERDA to get our panel started. John, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Sandy, and thanks, Karina, and thanks to the NASEO and E for the Future teams for providing these great services to all of our state energy offices. Certainly these are very valuable exchange forums for all of us, and really very much appreciate you bringing us all together for all this great information exchange. And great to see a lot of my state energy office and NASEO colleagues on today's webinar, looking at other aspects of the Infrastructure Act, particularly today on supply chain developments and workforce development needs. That IIJA is going to be able to kind of provide supports to us in presumably and hopefully the relatively near future. Certainly I think, like in all of our energy offices, we are dealing with how we are going to be looking at new technologies and integrating new technologies into our energy systems, and perhaps doing it from a number of different vantage points. Some of us are are, doing it from a very policy-driven space. Others are really able to capture the economics of new technologies, and others are even looking at how, these help with reliability planning exercises. And in New York, certainly we are really quite policy-driven. Our climate policy is really in the forefront of a lot of the energy planning that we are doing these days. And so, but part of that policy work that we're doing, it's not purely for environmental purposes. Certainly that is kind of a primary outcome that we work towards. But we also do look to the supply chain and workforce issues and the economic development opportunities that we can create for ourselves in New York State, so that we can become host to any number of component pieces of that supply chain, expand kind of business and investment in New York, and also look to provide long-term career opportunities for New Yorkers in our clean energy space. And Infrastructure Act and kind of the spectrum of activities that the Infrastructure Act is looking to help us to really spur into at-scale type action is going to be a helpful component piece of the way that we think about moving forward with both our supply chain and workforce development programs as we move them forward. And certainly in the very near term, we've been thinking about electric vehicle planning. The hydrogen hubs proposal is certainly going to be part and parcel of all of this. And then also, certainly grid resilience is something that we're all looking at and is kind of right on the table for us right now. And we look forward to the DOE's engagement on, all of those other actions that the IIJA has identified, and kind of gearing ourselves up for all of those opportunities in the future. But in New York, I will say, certainly like we are very anticipatory of a lot of Infrastructure Act opportunities, and we will work to see if we can participate in those opportunities that advance our clean energy agenda. But I think we also thinking about this in our clean energy agenda much more in a long-term perspective. And certainly when we think about needing the foundations for supply chain growth and workforce growth, I think both of those are elements that really prosper and benefit from having a bit more of a long-term horizon. Certainly the Infrastructure Act will provide some good near-term opportunities for us to get good foundation for various supply chain activities and for starting our workforce development at a big growth scale level. But I think also what we're trying to do, particularly in New York, is make sure that there's an understanding of what our long-term energy technology system needs are and what those workforce support needs are, and then orient all of our activities really towards making sure that participants in those New York activities are also understanding and feeling secure that they have a long-term investment horizon to be able to take advantage of. And that's an investment horizon both for capital investment for businesses that are looking to set up shop in New York, but it's also the investment of individuals who want to orient their careers and orient a long-term career in the clean energy space. So I think that as we kind of engage with some of these discussions, how does IIJA help to kind of shape the way we want to be thinking about the long term as we kind of launch in the near term, but also, making sure that we don't lose sight with some of the, the parameters that the Infrastructure Act, puts around program activities. So we, don't lose sight of what the opportunities we're looking to capitalize on. And just as a data point for New York, when we think about workforce and we've studied that as compared to our clean energy agenda, one of the big outcomes that we really are trying to capitalize on is that we see in the clean energy space that we have a doubling of the potential workforce in New York by 2030. And even when we look at the transitions that happen between now and 2030 from conventional energy to clean energy activities, we see a 10-to-1 gain in clean energy jobs versus the displacement of conventional energy jobs in New York. So very much an upside equation as we're looking to make that transition, but certainly there's a lot we need to make sure we're focusing on to make that transition from conventional energy to clean energy as smooth as possible for all New Yorkers. And then again, the long-term horizon for all of those workers is really when we look out even 30 years out to a 2050 horizon, we see a 4 times growth in that clean energy sector between now and then. So a lot of opportunity for growth, a lot of opportunity for various businesses to be coming into New York of all stripes and at all points in the supply chain. And so these are real things that we are orienting ourselves in New York and looking to make sure we are creating the right opportunities with the Investment Act as we think about the first couple of years on our longer term growth path. And from New York and hopefully for the rest of you, it's really great to engage with the partners on our panel today, Leah Rubenchen, the director at Advanced Energy Economy, AEE, and Lisa Jacobson at the Business Council for Sustainable Energy. Both of those folks will be really critical partners and integral to the way that we will be seeing our success again over the near term and the long term. So great to see that NASEO and E for the Future have brought AEE and BCSE to the table today, and in particular Leah and Lisa. And so great, thanks for joining us and great to see you on the screen. Why don't I hand the mic over to Leah first? You're just first on my grid, and look forward to hearing from you, and we'll go to Lisa after that. Thanks again.
Sure. Thanks, John, and thanks as well to NASEO and E for the Future for the opportunity to be with you all today. As John mentioned, I'm a director with Advanced Energy Economy, or AEE for short, where I wear basically 2 hats. I lead our federal engagement around infrastructure and federal funding, obviously a very hot topic right now. And then I also work with our advocacy leads in our Western states, which includes California, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, and New Mexico. AEE is a multi-technology trade organization that we advocate for the full breadth of the clean energy industry or the advanced energy industry. We have over 100 member companies that run the gamut from large-scale wind and solar developers, residential and small commercial solar, electric vehicle manufacturers, electric vehicle charging infrastructure providers, providers of energy storage and energy efficiency, as well as software that manages energy usage and data of all kinds. And then we also have a subset of our membership that is a group of large energy consumers that have really ambitious sustainability goals. So as you can imagine, that's a pretty big swath of folks, some shared interest, but a lot of diverse and overlapping interests. And on behalf of all of those members, we're engaged in policy advocacy in 13 states, as well as at the federal level. And that advocacy is legislative, regulatory, and administrative. So in terms of our engagement on EJA, we're tracking the rollout of all of these programs at the federal level. It feels like they're coming fast and furious right now, RFIs and RFPs and FOAs and all of the alphabet soup. And then the other way in which we're engaging actually pretty directly is that our state teams are in touch with many of your offices, as well as your public utility commissions, your air offices, or your DOTs about implementation, offering up ourselves and as well as also our members as a resource. Our members are really interested in these types of conversations that we're having. They're really interested in what kinds of stakeholder processes states are conducting or will be conducting. And they're interested in that because they want to be a resource and they want to provide technical information about their businesses and the types of programs that they can assist with. And in particular, they can go much deeper than we can on any given topic. So that's one of the ways in which they really want to be a resource and be helpful. You heard about the diversity of our membership. They're interested in kind of a wide range of programs. Different members have different interests, but a lot of them are following this pretty closely, and they want to be partnering with you and with other funding recipients like school districts or utilities on implementation of these programs. So at high level, that's kind of where we and our members are interested. In terms of, how they're sort of thinking about Buy America and will there be enough supply and can they sort of meet those goals? I think that really does depend on the technology. There's a pretty wide range. Folks may have seen an RFI from the joint DOE DOT office back in, I think this was actually back in maybe even last year. It's been so long. On domestic supply of EV charging infrastructure. That was like a very specific question they had. They were like, can we get this? Like, is this available? And we submitted comments in response. A handful of our members did too, kind of making the case that not as much as we need. There isn't enough supply for this. And so we all kind of made the collective argument that there should be a phased-in approach for those requirements. My sense is that the Joint Office was receptive to feedback like that. I don't think they want, those kinds of requirements to hinder the, sort of rollout of, installing EV chargers all over the nation or whatever, other program you're talking about. But it is tricky. I'll also just note for folks' awareness, AAE commissioned a study last year looking at sort of the domestic sales of 8 different advanced energy technologies and what percentage of those sales were from products that were made in America, by which we defined as final assembly. And it was a pretty big range. 87% of heat pumps sold in the US, for example, were made here or assembled here. We actually found that 85% of DC fast chargers were, but we also, I think, expect a significant increase in the use and the need for those. And so I think that percentage will inevitably drop. Conversely, 42% of smart grid communications devices, 12% of distributed solar, which I'm sure no one is shocked to hear. So it really is a range. And so it really is very technology dependent. So our position on this, and I think most of our members would agree with this, the ones that are focused on this anyway, is, we should acknowledge what our supply actually is, and we should also be working to increase it. So one of the other things that we and our members are pushing strongly for is some of the tax provisions and reconciliation that would support both investing in new factories and then also production-based tax credits that would kind of lower cost per widget, as well as a handful of other things. But basically, we do think there's a role for the federal government to be playing here, to not just say you have to buy these things, but also helping to increase the supply, and doing it in a more thoughtful and proactive way than slapping tariffs, because we also don't think that that's particularly helpful. I can't speak as readily on the workforce side in terms of, do our members feel like there is, available workforce? It's on their minds. I haven't heard the same concerns from them about workforce as I do about domestic supply of technologies. So from that, I take, and this might be the wrong interpretation, that it is less of an issue. But it's not an issue. I know that they're thinking about, making sure that they have access to a trained workforce, making sure those training programs exist where needed, making sure that they can get access to sort of the skills they need in the areas where they need them. I'm sure it's something that they're thinking about when they're thinking about, new places to locate new projects or new factories or whatever. And then another thing that I know a lot of them are thinking about, that I'll just throw out there, is diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and what role that plays in their hiring processes, and then also what role that might be playing overall in workforce development initiatives that they're partnering with states or with other folks on. So I'll just, one last thing, which is, what can states do? How can we all work together? Our members are hungry to partner with all of you. They're really excited. They want opportunities to engage. They want to have conversations. They want to know who to talk to in different offices about different programs, which I understand is sometimes still an open question for you all. So they understand that, we understand that, but we do want to get connected. They want to help shape programs as much as possible up front, to the extent that that's possible. They want, RFPs and funding to be competitive and fair. And I don't want to speak for all of them, but, at least for some of these programs, I think they're also prepared to help provide cost match. I know that's something that I've heard from some members about the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. And there may be others in that category as well. So in conclusion, we want to be a resource. They want to be a resource. We know it's an overwhelming amount of funding. It's a challenge for all of us to wrap our heads around it and figure out how to use it to advance, companies' priorities, a state's priorities, whoever's priorities. So let us know how we can help. And with that, I will turn it over to Lisa.
Thank you. Great to be with you all. And, that was excellent. And, maybe I will just amplify a few things that we just heard, because it's very consistent with what I hear from the Business Council for Sustainable Energies members. And then I had some other ideas to bring into the conversation. But for those that I don't know, nice to meet you virtually. It's always a pleasure to partner with NASEO, especially as we're thinking about this historic opportunity we have with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the multitude of programs and funding. It really is a critical opportunity, both for the near term and for the mid and long term, in terms of getting our industries ready to meet the challenges we know we need to meet related to climate change, and also at the same time, of course, ensuring affordable, secure, reliable, and safe energy systems in this country. So the Business Council for Sustainable Energy is similar to AEE in that we are multi-technology. We focus in slightly different areas. I mean, we have our predominant programs are here in Washington, D.C., where I'm speaking to you from, and it's related to federal education and advocacy on the clean energy economy. We do some work at the state and regional level, but not in the way that AEE does. So it's really a great partnership for our sectors to have the resources that AEE provides, and also to complement it with things that the council and other peer organizations do that represent clean energy industries. One other kind of more unique thing that BCSC is involved in since our founding, and we are in our 30th year right now, is to bring this conversation to multilateral and global environment and sustainability conversations, and have the opportunity to engage, with many state energy offices and governors and city leaders at those negotiations and those forums. And, they are kind of full on right now. And at the end of the day, even though they are having conversations at these multilateral and global levels, it's all about local and community action. So even though we are sometimes in different parts of the world and, talking about things at a very high level, at the end of the day, it's all the work that you do and the work that you're doing with local communities is where we're going to get the action and the results. So I'm glad that the council has that perspective, because we learn a great deal from hearing from other countries and the challenges they face. But similar to AEE, we see tremendous opportunity for our sectors here in the United States and North America, as well as in other countries. But a key to us achieving, did anything happen, Sandy? Did you guys lose me?
Sorry, Lisa, the block that was showing was your phone block as opposed to your video. So I just made sure that the video was showing. No worries.
I'm
sorry to
sorry. I
interrupt.
could see myself. I apologize. I could see myself the whole time, so I just assumed that you could. But can you see me now?
Yes, we can see you. You look
Okay.
great. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Live from Washington, D.C. here. Sorry about that technical difficulty. But I was saying, we see tremendous opportunity in our sectors, and we think key to that is strong domestic policy, and that happens at the federal level, but increasingly for the energy sector, it's really local and state policies. So the partnership with state energy offices is really fundamental, and good to be having this kind of conversation today. And then just, piggybacking on what John was saying about jobs, and thinking about this discussion today, and I'm eagerly awaiting the next U.S. energy and employment report. I was like, what are some of the forecasts out there in terms of the job creation potential? And I found one from a number of groups, including Third Way, that was just released a few days ago. And it's just one of many that would say, they were looking at a net increase in 2 million jobs by 2030 in our industries through, it's called, I want to get the name of the report right, Decarb America. So check out this latest analysis that's out there. But, it's not surprising. There's tremendous opportunity. And right now, still the largest sector, and what they are forecasting to be in the short term, the largest sector of clean energy economy jobs are in the area of energy efficiency. And soon it will, in their view, will transition more to sustainable transportation, and eventually further down the line, to biofuels in other areas. But, whatever the combination is going to be, these are really important opportunities, as John was saying, to make long-term investments in workforce training and economic development so that, we can have a robust and equitable clean energy transition and create jobs in many, many communities. Because when we think about, in particular, energy efficiency, that clearly can be anywhere. So a lot of opportunity. Sticking with some of the questions related to IIJA and what some of the opportunities and challenges are, I did speak to a few of our members who I'm very involved in all of these RFIs and other correspondence. We're trying to shape these programs in real time, the new ones. I asked, kind of how is the Buy America regime, and, how are you feeling about the workforce? And I heard different things. And from some of the predominantly renewable energy sector and mostly utility scale, they felt on the workforce that while they clearly have workforce goals in terms of hiring and see an expansive opportunity, they didn't see that as their biggest challenge. But on the energy efficiency side, I heard from very emphatically a number of people that they are feeling like they really are needing, they won't have the workforce that they need, basically, is kind of what they said, and sometimes with an exclamation point. So we can take that for what it is, but all said that state energy offices can be a really key partner and help to encourage the states in partnership with their economic development offices, their Department of Labor, to really focus on the energy economy as a growth area and support those workforce programs and do them for the long term. So it's really a critical moment. And again, for the energy efficiency industries I spoke to, they really put a fine note on that. As it relates to Buy America, I think very much what Leah said, it really depends on the technology and it depends on the program. But right now in real time, the council's working on our comments on just one of many new programs called the Transmission Facilitation Program under DOE's Office of Grid Deployment. And they have certain Buy America requirements that we anticipate being part of implementation of that program. But for a number of components that are involved in these potential projects that will be eligible, they are not available domestically, and they won't be in the short term. So there would need to be an opportunity to pursue waivers for those types of technologies. But this is just one program. And, I think, what are we looking at? 60 new programs. So there needs to be talk and discussion with technology providers. And I totally also agree with what my colleague just said. I mean, it's best to know. Let's just have as transparent and comprehensive conversation as we can about what the state of these industries are and what we have available to us in our domestic supply chain, and not let that hamper us from the deployment that we need to do immediately, but come up with frameworks so that we can do both. We can onshore more, we can manufacture more here, but we're not stopping deployment because of it. And the last point I'll make is critical to having manufacturing here is having a long-term stable market here in the United States or regionally. So that will be also a partnership between government and the private sector, and partnership between federal incentives perhaps. And we also very much want to see those long-term extensions and expansion of extensions to many technologies that are critical today for deployment as well as into the future. And, the types of initiatives that a state or a local government might put forward as it relates to greenhouse gas emissions or economic development or, climate resilience. I mean, there's so many areas where we can send a market signal, but given the pace with which we need to accomplish all this deployment, we really need to be talking more. And, that I also agree from the business side and IIJA, they just want to know who to talk to and how to get involved, because they don't have, and they lean in on groups like all of ours because they don't necessarily have the time and resources to track all of this. And it is all coming in many cases at once, and it's very fast moving. So they just don't want to miss out. And if there's anything, that we can continue to do in partnership to communicate opportunities to the business community and how they can connect with their energy offices, I know that's very welcome.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, Leah, and John. That was a great, just a series of insights to share with our members. I did want to make one quick note. NASEO is happy to help facilitate any state energy offices that might be interested in connecting with AEE or BCSE, either the experts that we heard from today or their members that might be located in your states or regions that you'd be interested in hearing from. So if that's the case, don't hesitate to contact NASEO staff. I'll drop my email in the chat as well, so you have that. Leah and Lisa, you both highlighted, the fact that there is a range of domestic production happening, whether it's in terms of manufacturing or assembly. I'm wondering if you happen to know whether that's pretty diffuse across the US or happening in specific states or regions. And in that case, whether, state energy offices should be pretty focused on, the technologies that are being developed there and trying to sort of promote that within their own ecosystem. So would welcome any thoughts. And also just welcome any questions from the audience. Feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand for our speakers today.
Well, I can just start to say that I don't really know. I don't know why I keep getting blocked off your video. So I apologize for that.
We can hear you.
But I see myself. I was going to say that maybe in the report that Leah discussed, there's information about where geographically most of the deployment is, but where the manufacturing is for some of the supply chain. But what I would say that I take note, I was looking at some of the recent market reports from the first quarter of this year, where so much deployment is happening. When you look at those states, that's going to be a center point for a lot of the supply chain. Doesn't mean the manufacturing has to be there, but again, it is sending a really strong regional signal to where potentially states will work in partnership to build out certain sector plans, or we think about things like an IIJ, like the hydrogen hubs. It doesn't mean all the components are necessarily going to be where a hydrogen hub is, but it certainly sends a strong signal for workforce and for the need to have all the critical materials and components in those hub areas. But other programs also are organized and or encourage a regional focus. So that's what I could add.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. The report I mentioned does not break down sort of where that manufacturing or assembly is occurring by geography. I think the two things that we do know, based on, we've done a bunch of EV specific reports at AEE as well, and certainly see, not all of the electric vehicle activity is in sort of traditional auto manufacturing states and regions, but that's certainly a big component of it. A lot of that happening in the Midwest and the Southeast, but not exclusively. Also some happening in California, Arizona, probably other states I'm forgetting, so don't come for me. And then the other thing I'll note is that, we also do see in a lot of cases, when you have a final product, sort of like a hub for a final product somewhere, that supply chain components and suppliers of those components do tend to cluster, and that winds up being just extremely convenient for everybody. And it's potentially even a good way to attract those supply chain components if they know that they've got a big market right there. So when we're thinking about, how do you sort of build that manufacturing cluster? That's one thing to consider.
And maybe Sandy, I'll just add just some additional support for kind of this regional approach that both Lisa and Leah are kind of mentioning here. And even from like a state perspective, like certainly like we all work within our regions, we all probably have good, healthy competition among our states to try to attract, as much in-state activity as we can to help our, the citizens of our own states. But, what regional approaches do, like, the more that you can build that broader ecosystem, it really does wind up attracting a lot more different types of activity as well. I agree, like with Leah, like, you can really get a good cluster of a lot of those attendant activities. But ecosystems also tend to spawn other ecosystems. And the more that I think we can work on regional bases and understand that there is kind of a mutual benefit outcome that we can all aim for, that is something that, at least in the Northeast, we do a lot of engagement, in the appropriate spaces to make sure that we're all sort of finding our way to finding benefit in all of these new kind of technology spaces and market spaces.
Great, thanks. We did have a question come through in the chat about whether the AEE report is available publicly, or is that more for internal purposes, Leah?
No, I'm 90% it is available publicly, and I'm going to go look up the link for it right now, and I'll drop it in the chat so anybody can go download it.
Perfect, thanks. Great. One other question that I had, some of the states are really dealing with this question of just transition, especially in sort of the transition from coal generation and other types of fossil fuel generation to clean generation. So I know Leah's searching for this link, so maybe Lisa, you can help speak to this. Is that something that's also on private sector companies' minds, and are they sort of leaning in to offer workforce training or new economic development opportunities in the geographies where those just transition challenges are happening?
I think very much so. And again, here, let me turn my camera back on and off and see if that helps. No, you still can't see me. That's really, okay. Now you see me? Hopefully.
We've got
Yes?
you.
Okay, all right, okay. So the answer is yes. I think it's happening differently, but let's go back to the first point I made on the largest segment of clean energy jobs. They are in energy efficiency areas, and obviously energy efficiency industries are very diverse. They're service providers, they're equipment manufacturers, they're integrators, they're your utility. I mean, there's, in the utility programs that they put forward, they are large energy service companies. So that may be working, with your local government on their judicial building or their campus, or they're working with the university to deploy energy management and energy efficiency. So energy efficiency is everywhere, which when I talk about workforce around our tables, you hear a lot of really interesting and innovative and very long-term programs as it relates to the energy efficiency industries. I look at, I could pick a number of industries, but I'll pick the solar industry for a moment right now. They are also being very intentional about trying to offer and provide employment and workforce opportunities in a very diverse set of areas. Yes, there are states and regions where they have very strong renewable energy goals and they've deployed very well there, but they don't limit their opportunities to just that. And from a workforce perspective, they know if they want to move into an area or that they can offer benefits to a community, you got to lean in. And so I see them making, again, some very intentional choices about going to parts of the country where they see real market opportunity, even if they don't have right now necessarily a strong inroads in the market there. So I think the industries expect to grow. Again, that's the other thing. We're talking about scale. Even if these goals are not met, they're talking about, quadrupling in terms of their output and the growth of their sectors. And so, they need the workforce. So they have to be thinking strategically about it, and they need to bring everybody along. It can't be, and it needs to be geographically as well as equitable. So the last 5 or 6 years, it's really been a big change in the conversation on the strategic need to support employment and equity around the BCSC tables.
Great, thanks, Lisa. I think that's a great point about energy efficiency employment. One of the U.S. Energy and Employment Reports, not the one that should be coming out in the next few weeks, but in the past we found that all but 6 counties in the U.S. had energy efficiency jobs. So it's pretty available, and they tend to also be pretty accessible to people without college degrees. So we definitely consider that an on-ramp, I think, for a lot of state energy offices. So appreciate your comments there. Leah, I know you might be still looking on AEE's website, but feel free to weigh in if there's anything from your perspective to add.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much to add, and I will just say that I am having trouble finding this report. So maybe what I'll do is, if I can locate it later, send it to you, Sandy, and then you can get it to folks.
Sure thing, that's perfect. Great. Any further questions or comments from the audience? We're definitely interested in your experience in this field, working with your partners and trying to think about some early stage planning for IIJA. So any questions or challenges that you're grappling with, you'd be very welcome to share them here.
Yes, Sandy, maybe I'll just reveal a little side chat that I'm having here. But an interesting question, and I think has some broad applicability. And the question is really for New York, how much do we see, or what is the importance that New York places, like when we think about our building decarbonization, what is the level of importance of having in-state manufacturing versus say regional manufacturing? And I might even scale that more to even say national manufacturing. And certainly for a state like we wouldn't say no. If we certainly wanted having manufacturers looking to locate in New York, we certainly have materials manufacturing already occurring in New York, and we're trying to encourage them to thinking about kind of the new building materials and building designs that we need to see coming in New York. We're happy to have that here. I would say that the New York building sector is enormous, right? We have over 6 million buildings. I don't think it would really be kind of overly reasonable for us to try to hone in too much on kind of in-state manufacturing as kind of a full type of requirement. We have done a number of different programs, not necessarily in the building space, but certainly in our renewable development space, where our bid process does give some additional considerations for any local economic development that projects are willing to build with us. And certainly we are looking to see, is that transferable to a number of different types of activities that we engage in. But again, I think we would see it more as a consideration rather than a deciding factor. And I think, to get to the scale, to get to the pace of decarbonization on our buildings, we certainly would be thinking that we will be looking at regional national resources, but certainly we'll love to see in-state New York manufacturing also find a home to that very local market. And I see Ralph with his hand up. It was Ralph actually who was posing the question earlier.
Thanks, John. Do you mind if I ask another question of the group? So Ralph Gianola with New Buildings Institute. I'm very interested in this topic. We've been talking with some equity-based organizations to perhaps partner on proposals around workforce development and economic inclusion around decarbonization. And specifically, I would like to ask the whole group about the Defense Production Act that just was announced, and this kind of the increase in manufacturing of clean technologies that we're looking for, right? And specifically solar insulation and heat pumps. And I would say, importantly, we actually just came off of a call for the Advanced Water Heating Initiative, which is a national initiative, and we're having conversations in New York about that too. But what I would say is, from our perspective, the manufacturers will say, fantastic, the federal government wants us to increase production of these technologies. There are two issues that we hear from manufacturers. One, show us the market. In other words, where is the market for these technologies? And then the other complexity is the workforce. Who is going to install these technologies, and where are the skilled workers or skilled trades? And we know that there are lots and lots of tradespeople out there installing, kind of business as usual products, be they, fossil fuel technologies or inefficient technologies. So there's this kind of double need for, basically this just transition of skilled workers, but also the conversation we're having with this equity-based organization is how do we build intergenerational wealth and by basically promoting or supporting BIPOC tradespeople, right? To have this kind of, we do see a lot of non-BIPOC tradespeople having, their generational kind of businesses thrive. So I'm just curious about this kind of thought about, creating the market and the workforce for this decarbonization transition that we are hoping for.
I can make a couple of comments. And I think I understand what the issue is because my audio is on my phone. So I think the Zoom keeps going to my phone to look for me. So anyway, I think I now understand why it was happening. So apologize for that. But it's just on a call with one of our members, just running through some of the legal issues going on related to the suite of announcements that were made on Monday, including the Defense Production Act. And just one of the comments they made that I thought was really strong was, this was mostly targeted at the solar industry, but I think it's probably a universal comment, but also gives food for thought for other industries. They will have all industries will have different needs that were highlighted. There were 5 that were pointed out. But for the solar conversation, they said they had been thinking about potential Defense Production Act funding or authorities to do long-term, multi-decade contracts, like 20-year contracts, or other things that would signal a long-term certain market that could be incentivized through these, this funding and unique authority. Because at the end of the day, people aren't going to build manufacturing if they don't know in 10 years if there's going to be a market to support it. They're not going to invest in workforce training if they don't know that they can provide jobs 5-10 years out. Even though the market forecasts, as I said, are so strong, we all are working towards this vision and we see bits of it. To get the dollars and things built, there needs to be enhanced certainty. So there's some conversation around the Defense Production Act authorities to help kind of create that stronger and enduring market certainty. And I'm not sure if it can be used directly in any way for workforce initiatives. That's worth exploring. For those on the call that may have just read about it, I think there's a lot of uncertainty still about how all of these mechanisms will be employed for these different technologies based on the recent announcement of just Monday with the Defense Production Act. But the Department of Energy, and I know NASEO will be, have a very prominent seat at the table. We'll be talking with states, cities, community leaders, the business community to explore further what can be done under this new proclamation to support the deployment of these industries. But again, the big message is we need a strong, enduring market at home. And if there is a sense that we will have that, and these are long-lived investments, we're talking not just the 5-year window, we're talking sometimes 20, 30, 40 years, then there will be a response when it comes to manufacturing as well as employment. But the last thing I'd say is that makes it sound so easy. I mean, for underserved, underinvested communities, this is a very long-term and challenging set of issues, but it was really community driven with support from lots of places, but it has to start with that unique community and the unique community needs. And states can help bring and convene the partners together and intentionally pinpoint communities and say, this is, we want to work in this community. We want to bring the right people together, and it won't happen in 1 or 2 years. It's probably a generational or multi-generational objective and challenge and opportunity, more importantly, for us all.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things. Completely agree with everything Lisa just said, particularly about the importance of these things sort of starting with the community and the role that states can play in kind of convening folks and bringing folks together. as well as, the need for sort of, supply support is great, but you do need the demand support as well. And when we were chatting with our members about the 48C tax credit, which is the investment tax credit for investing in manufacturing facilities, they said it was like half good last time around, but like we didn't have the demand, like all these factories sprung up, or maybe they didn't spring up, but in theory they could have sprung up, but they didn't have anybody to sell their products to. And so that the one thing they emphasize with us over and over again is you need the demand support as well. You need something to be, on the other end to buy all of these things. So as a former congressional staffer, I'll just put in a quick plug for Congress. This is a place where Congress can also help play a role. And I'm still digging into the Defense Production Act stuff as well. I'm sure we all are, but the one thing I am aware of is that I believe that funds do need to be appropriated at this point to actually bring some of those policy initiatives to light. So there are multiple sort of avenues of influence if there are particular needs that we think are important around workforce or other aspects of that.
I think I'll just add sort of on the workforce question, Ralph. I think that's a great piece to be focused on. Sort of reiterating Lisa and Leah's point about, it sounds like there was quite a bit of heartburn at the end of ARA, where there was a lot of training that occurred for these like very short-term projects. So people that graduated out of these training programs sort of were left with not much to do after that initial spurt. So having sort of that really sustainable career opportunity is really critical. And I think especially for people that have been underrepresented. The other part of this that I'll highlight, NASEO has done a little bit of research with BW Research and the Historically Black Colleges and Universities Community Development Action Coalition. But essentially what we found was that, yes, the sort of technical and technician workforce at the entry level there are a lot of disparities demographically, but then also once you go up the hierarchy within the companies, they tend to be majority white, older men. And so diversifying the workforce at all levels can also create really good impacts in terms of having more diverse recruitment practices and inclusive environments that lend themselves to more diverse workers. And so I think there's sort of strategies at all different levels, whether you're talking about entry level or the jobs that require the degrees and the MBAs and whatnot.
Yeah, and maybe Sandy, if I can build on, so even our workforce programs, are really oriented to really try to hone in on different kind of what I would call segments of the workforce market, right? And in New York, where we are looking at really such significant and relatively rapid change and shift, again, from conventional energy, part of what we call this just transition is making sure that kind of that workforce that we had depended on that exists today is, appropriately skilled, either for transition into other clean energy jobs, or that we're, utilizing kind of the existing skill sets and applying them in the appropriate other businesses. It might not be necessarily an energy job. So we're trying to do a lot of kind of that skills identification and movement across the economy along those lines, rather than kind of just focusing ourselves just on that kind of that clean energy outcome. When it comes to, making sure that we've got equitable outcomes built in, our programs do have, what we call priority populations, which are looking at making sure that we're focusing kind of the recruitment effort, as it were, in communities, that are previously disadvantaged, or looking at specific populations, disabled veterans, single mothers, recently incarcerated. These are all populations that, we want to be able to work with. We want to make sure that they're feeling confident that there's, an opportunity space for them, and that long-term opportunity space. So, we tailor the different types of programs to the specific needs of those folks, whether it's an apprenticeship job, whether it's an employer support for bringing somebody new into their workforce, other types of skills training are also true. And then, like, I think at the end of the day, we do see still a lot of upside. So it's also getting into the schools and trying to make sure that we've got that natural kind of jobs growth that we would otherwise be expect. We don't want to, lose that. We don't want to lose that thread either. So it is a complex, multi-pronged approach to like what that workforce needs are. And I think, we do need to make sure that we are trying to operate, on all those different levels and making sure that we're engaging all the appropriate communities. So we do build that great long-term workforce that we will need.
Great points, John. And I will just say for anybody that wants sort of the model workforce program, definitely check out NYSERDA's website. They've got a lot of different approaches and multi-prongs and a lot of good success too. So congratulations. We are nearing the end of our time together. If there are any other questions from the audience, feel free to chat them in or raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll invite John, Leah, and Lisa to share any final words. And thank you all again for being here.
Well, I'll go first. This is Lisa again. There you go. I just want to say thank you. It's been a great conversation and really see NASEO as an essential partner for the BCSE. And Leah, it's great to have the opportunity to hear from you. And it's great the work that AE is doing. I look forward to our continued partnership. And John, great to see you again. I'm from Long Island, so New York, strong. It's impressive to see and hear what's going on in New York, but I know it's happening in so many areas in our country. So think of BCSE as a resource, and this Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act work we're all going to be involved in, because this is not like ARA. This is going to go on for different phases, up to 10 years. So yeah, I'm looking forward to working with you all. And Karina, thank you for your support for this event and for the Future's work as well.
Echoing all of Lisa's thanks, and it's also great to hear what BCSE is up to and to be working with you all, and as well as NASEO and E for the Future and the state of New York. So thanks to everyone, and we're just really excited about this. I'm excited. Our members are excited. I hope you all are excited. And I know that there's a ton of shared goals and really wonderful opportunities here. So looking forward to continuing to all row together in the same direction on that.
Great. Thank you, Leah. John, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I'll just echo thanks to you, Lisa and Leah, for joining the stage today, and looking forward to partnerships with all of us states. We're looking forward to partnerships with you, and there's a lot of opportunity I know we're looking to create, and so hopefully we can make sure that your members are all aware of that and can find the appropriate opportunities in all of our spaces. And also thanks again, Karina and E for the Future, and Sandy and NASEO. Always great to have you kind of bringing us all together for the topics.
Great, thank you, John. Karina, any final words?
Yeah, thank you to all our speakers. Great participation. Also, thank you to the audience. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions or would like to chat further. Take care.